Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion on networking for impact. So, may I introduce you to the first panelist, and that is Manish Panchal. So, Manish Panchal is a strategic thinker with certifications on lateral system and design thinking program from the Stanford University. He brings on board 32 years of experience with a mix of industry and consulting services. He has served some of the best organizations in the world, which include Abbott Industries, Johnson& and Johnson, Braun, Tata Group, Reliance Industries, and before joining the Equirus Group, he served with DuPont Sustainable Solutions, which is a global leader in operations risk management. He is also an independent director with ILFS AMC and on board of several other companies as non-executive director. He is also the author of the book Define Your Orbit. Manish, welcome to the panel discussion on networking for impact.
Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you.
With this, I would like to introduce you to our next speaker, and that is Santhosh Babu. Santosh's expertise lies in leadership development. He is the author of the book Coaching, the Art of Developing Leaders, published by Willie. He coaches CEOs and celebrities and used to run a coach training program from the year 2006 to the year 2016. He has been a visiting faculty to ISB, to the University of Chicago, and Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Yeah. May I request Santhosh also? Yes, very much there. Welcome, Santhosh. Welcome.
Hi.
Santhosh, I would just like to tell you about him. Santhosh is the founder of OD Alternatives and Org Lens. And we will all be envious about Santhosh because currently Santhosh is located at an exotic location in a coffee estate in Coorg, from where he does all his work and yet travels all across the globe to complete his assignments. So welcome Santhosh to this panel discussion on networking for impact.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. So with this then, let's get started off with our discussion. Now, this topic is a topic which is extremely important for all of us, because somewhere or the other, during our careers, I'm sure all of us have been told that it's important for us to network, because it's been believed that networking is what actually gets you the opportunities. And somewhere or the other, yes, it is true. Because if I talk about myself also, I think I have really leveraged on the network which I have developed over the last so many years, right from the time when I was in college, while I was working with various organizations. So that's about me. But what about others who have not been able to develop? Then the onus lies on them to be able to develop that network and to be able to get the maximum benefit out of that network. So with this then, let's get started off with our discussion with our panelists. And my first question to both of you is, what is your understanding of this word network? And it would really be great if you could share some of your own personal experiences related to networking in your professional lives. So Manish, over to you first, and then Santhosh, I will also request you to answer this question.
Sure. So thank you, first of all. Thanks to ICF to have me on this panel. And thanks, Rajesh, for this wonderful plan of the session. So getting on to this question of my understanding of networking, I'll keep it short. So I'll split the word into net and working. So as the first word net means connect or web. And when this net is interconnected with an option of on and off, that is the switch. So I call it as working. So my definition of networking is a process of building connects and maintaining it on and off is networking. Coming to the second point in terms of my experience, in fact, there are a lot of things. I would leave it for the sequel, maybe in later part, but has been great journey from the time as you have shared in your introductory note, coming in from a background of pharma, sales, marketing. It is basically, I would say, all the credit goes to some of the elements or major elements of the way I've been able to network with people in higher orbits. That's something which has brought me here today. So I'll share more once we go forward, and leave it to Santhosh to share his view.
Thank you, Manish. To me, these two words, network and networking, are completely different. That's the first distinction we should get. We should be building a network, but at the same time, when we use the word networking, what comes up in your mind is an event, a professional body, or you going around to meet with the purpose of meeting and connecting with people. I must tell you that I'm a deep introvert. I hate meeting people. I've never been to a networking event in my life. For the last 25 years, I run a consulting firm which largely work with HR folks. But the two largest professional HR bodies for the conferences, I've never been. So I need to give this distinction that building network is important, and networking per se uh, brings up some typical styles and events, and that's not necessary to build the network, at least in my case, because I'm not cut out to go and have lunches and dinners and breakfast meetings and meet people. It's very tiring. I actually live here with 7 dogs and in an 11-acre property, and my nearest neighbor is a kilometer away, and I love that. So I just say, for today, right now sake, in your mind, create these two distinctions: build the network and networking. I'm not saying networking is not bad. It doesn't fit for me, but I do have some theories and techniques to build the network. Thank you.
Wonderful, Santosh. I was really having a good laugh when you spoke about your 7 dogs and the nearest person being 7 kilometers. I mean, couple of
One
kilometers
kilometer away.
away. Very interesting perspective which both of you have shared about network and networking. So now let's come to this word impact, because the topic of the discussion is networking for impact. So how do we create that impact, and how do we create that impact? How do we create that impact for ourselves, and how do we create that impact for others? Yeah. Again, over to you to understand from you, how is it that you have been able to, what is this about impact, and how is it that you have been able to do that?
I would like take the point from what Santosh just mentioned in terms of his thoughts on network and networking and segregating the two separately. Whereas my view is you can't network without networking. And the part which Santosh is highlighting as networking, which he doesn't do, I would rather link it to the networking for impact part of it. So, with this as in context, it changes the perspective of this networking, and networking for impact. So, when we add this word impact, means expecting some outcome from the relationship or the network we build. So this will happen only when we have clear objective as to why we are connecting or trying to connect or network with an individual, and what is our expectations. So for example, a salesperson would network to just sell, which is his ultimate objective. While a business development person may not sell, but focus on developing long-term relationship. And hence it depends on what outcome we are expecting. Either it is tactical and short term, or strategic and long term. And this will define our approach and the whole networking process. So, if you ask me personally, I have never taken a tactical approach, and my philosophy is friends for life. So across level of network, be it a watchman or a CEO, promoter of the company, or be it anyone, it is just that consciously we define when and how you want to keep the net working, as I said, the on and off with respective individuals.
Got it. Yeah. So impact has multiple meanings. The way I look at is build the network so that I'm able to create an impact on the purpose that I have in life, and I'm able to create an impact on the other person's life. Now, a couple of theories. There are two kinds of networks that we can build a relationship from a theoretical perspective. One is called an instrumental ties. Tie means a connection. This came from computer language and data science. In fact, data science, network science from a algorithmic perspective, anthropology and psychology are the areas from which this whole theory came up. So there are two kinds of ties we need to look at. One is called an instrumental tie. So instrumental tie means we are building a tie or a relationship purely with an intent of work gain or a commercial gain, or so salesperson trying to build a client from that, which is called an instrumental tie. The second one is called an expressive tie. An expressive tie means you are building a relationship because there is high level of trust, there is an emotional need to get connected, and that other person come up and share stuff with you. You can trust the other person and share things, and these are emotional ties. In fact, we did a research and we found that women make more expressive ties and men make more instrumental ties in the organization. So to me, impact means when we are able to make ties which are more expressive than just instrumental.
That's really interesting, Santosh. That yes, very nicely defined by you. That when we are able to make more expressive rather than instrumental.
Ties.
And coming to Manish, you mentioned friends for life. So how do you maintain that? I mean, uh, when we go through your resume, you're a director of so many organizations. You must be remaining busy, constantly traveling all over. So how is it that you are able to maintain that connect with people? When we talk about networks, it's also important for us to be able to maintain those networks, isn't it? So
Yeah,
let's hear from you as to how is you mentioned friends for life, and that is actually what prompted me to ask you this question.
sure. So I would put it this way. I mean, morning till evening, we are all social animals, right? I mean, we keep meeting people. So how genuine and how nicely you treat others as you expect them to treat you back is what fundamental approach I take in my life. And with that, it depends on how frequently you keep these individuals, engaged or keep meeting them while you are doing your day to day, be it in office, be it at home, be it at society around you, be it at friend circles around you. It starts building. So I would put it very simple that technically it's not difficult. You just need to have open mind, not to keep your mind closed, because I have a very different perspective in terms of if you keep your mind closed, there's an ego factor which comes out and reflects back in the society that this gentleman doesn't need any help, or because you never know. I believe you never know at what point in time who can come forward to help you. It can be even somebody you know who is a shopkeeper or maybe a watchman of the building. You never know. So it's always good to have good humor, keep people engaged, and keep your image positive to help you keep connected with them. So, Friends for Life is from that angle.
Okay, all right, fine. Thank you
No
very much.
enemies, no enemies, no burning of bridges.
Yeah, thank you, Manish, for that response. Yes, I mean, You've really explained how the Friends of Life philosophy of yours works. And Santosh, you mentioned about you being away. You are in that place where there is nobody all around. So how is it that you also maintain your connect with people on a regular basis so that everybody feels that you're connected?
Yeah, I also have a couple of questions related to that, which came on my chat here. And how did I build the network? And I've been living here only last 2 years. I used to live in a metro, but there was no difference. Even when I lived in the metro, I never went out to meet people. And when I finish my work, um, I'm back at home, being with the dogs. So again, what helped me is the theory part. Getting deeper, there are three kind of relationships. So broadly, I said the relationships can be looked at instrumental ties and expressive ties. And when we go down, there are three different kind of communities that we need to look at getting connected. One are people who are similar to you. These connections in the network science, I keep using this word called network science. By the way, there is a network science. So, which study the network phenomena. And I've been trained in that. So that did help. So one kind of connections are called the bonding connection, bond, BOND, which simply says that people who are similar to you. But if you have only those relationships, all your friends are coaches, then you don't get much out of that network because everybody would tell you the same thing. So just imagine all your friends are from the same background. When you're facing with a challenge, you go to somebody, and the advice that somebody gives you is going to be the same one the other guy gives because they are all coming from the same background, same experience, same kind of a socio-economic background. But that's called the bonding relationship. You need to have them so that you know you are embedded in a similarity network. But if you have that only, many a time you will not be very successful. The second kind of connections are called the bridging connections. These are the expressive ties or a trusted relationship that you have with people who have nothing to do with what you do. And because they are bridges. Why they're called bridges, they could actually take you to a different community where they belong to. So some of my friends are artists. If I go and ask another consultant when I'm going through something, the consultant might, all consultants will give me the same answer, a 2 by 2 framework, possibly. But if I ask an artist, this is what I'm doing, this is my challenge. I don't know how to build my right clientele. How do you figure out who will buy your painting? So because he is my bridging connection, the perspective that he give will be an extremely different. And the people who connect, suppose this artist has a relationship with the CEO. And when this artist put in a word saying that, you know what, I know a guy called Santhosh. I really don't know what he does, but he says he's a coaches to people like you. Compared to somebody, a consultant introduced me to the CEO, I found that the artist will have much more impact. So the second level of connections that I tend to have naturally is called the bridging connections. The third one is called the linking connections. Linking connections in an easy way is called people who are in power and authority. Some of the people, so they could pass resources to you. So bonding connections, bridging connections, and linking connections. While the question was specifically how did I build the network, that theory is for the next one. I will hold on to it by explaining that you need to look at three kinds of network: the bridges, the bondings, and the linking. Then I'll come back again.
Very interesting to know about the bridges, the bonding, and the linking theories as far as the network is concerned. Now, I was just looking at the questions, and I think one question which is right here and an interesting one, and that is also very similar to what I was going to ask you. So let me ask the question. The question is, what is at the root of discomfort which we feel in taking the initiative in connecting with others? Okay, is it true that we need to be extroverted to feel comfortable while doing this? Shripad has asked this question.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm quite excited to answer also. So because it's
Mhm.
an interesting twist. It's like the question comes to like, can everybody network? Some may who are extroverts. So uh, I would put it this way. I mean, even if you are extrovert or introvert, the fundamental goes as you would need somebody to introduce you. If you are extrovert, the only difference would be you won't mind walking forward and getting yourself introduced by yourself. If you are introvert, sometimes I've seen many a times, and many of us also would be able to relate, people go around with friends and they would introduce this gentleman. And I've seen this in many of my circles or friends who are really brilliant guys. They would be very good in maybe art or culture, but they find it little uncomfortable to go and introduce themselves. I would not use the word introvert. So there is another perspective. I'm not a researched guy like Santhosh. So but there's another category also of people who would tend to be remaining with themselves more and would wait for somebody to introduce. So giving that perspective, it is not necessarily only extroverts can network. Introverts also can network, and those who are somewhere in middle get themselves network with right set of extrovert people who would introduce them. So that's the kind of a process generally I've seen people follow, and it's up to individual and his own personality. He would think how he would want to go about. But here I would like to bring in a little different perspective. Uh, Linking at the point what uh, Santosh just shared those 3 points. I would think it from this angle. So it's like beyond the personality types. So I would say the two elements which also plays a role is the need of individual to connect with people, and second is it is his ego which may come out, which may or may not allow him to openly express his experience or his introduction to the other individual. So need and ego aspect also plays significant role. Let me give you some examples so you will be able to connect. So if you look at our own life, the kind of network we build or relationships we build during our early age, say in school or college, it goes through a very simple process because there's no much of need or ego. Need would be there to some extent, but ego is almost zero. And the quality of friends typically you make in those days, I'm rarely or yet to hear any of our circles who would say ki school friends or college friends are not the best buddies. Maybe today they might not be great guys or doing amazing work, or somebody may be doing amazing work, but still that bonding is always very different. So that is one set. The second set is as we go through the process and we get our job, or as we grow in our role and responsibility and we may become a manager or a supervisor, etc. So we start feeling I'm bit something, so our need to network becomes often more outcome oriented because you have limited time, you have to achieve many things, you want to do a lot of things. So it becomes little outcome oriented, and gradually it starts drifting more towards maybe tactical or short-lived stuff. As you move further higher up, in CXO level, uh, when you start, speaking in conferences, you may start playing golf. Uh, we tend to showcase that I don't need to network now. I'm sure all of us would be able to visualize what I'm saying, and all of us must have met people like this, where in conference or event, they will not carry their business cards or may carry but not give their business cards freely. This is because he doesn't need to show that I want to network. And that ego comes in front, is what my view is. And it is something which finally, if you look at when the person grows old or retires, you go back to this kind of a school kind of an approach where your kids are no more maybe living with you or your grandkids, and they are all busy. You may start feeling lonely, and your social networks are cutting off. You see some of your friends no more around you, and need of inclusion is increased, and that brings the ego level down, and you find them going for a morning walk or a jog or socializing with friends of similar age group coming from different networking or social zone. So friends, again, I would put it this way, there's no right or wrong, there's no theory around it, and don't try to put any theory around it. It is a choice we make on the process of networking based on the objective you want to define. So for me, I find distribution of business cards freely has a significant uh, help in my connects. Even if I'm anywhere, I don't mind giving 100 cards in one event. What will happen? Maximum they'll call you. I'm not going to register the call, so I rarely pick up an unknown call. So it's a process. I mean, if somebody is calling desperately, that the person is calling desperately. I'll message him that please WhatsApp, I'm busy. He'll send a note. I'll say send, give an email ID, send more details. What do you look for me? And automatically you find like-minded people coming more towards you. You yourself decide you've spreaded 100 cards and you find somebody who's genuinely interesting as in person you would like to network. You drive yourself, register his number, and send a message. It was pleasure meeting you, Shripad, and looking forward to be in touch with you, Shripad. So that is how I believe to keep it free flow. And believe me, I've never been bothered or disturbed by any such unsolicited calls. It's just that I ignore it. My phone is most of the time on silent mode. So you have your time to work the way you want to work. That's my way of thinking and recommending. If it fits anybody in this audience, they can try this out.
Thank you, Manish, for those inputs. And I will now come to another important question, Santosh. Santosh, you have been dealing with a lot of leaders. Yeah, your expertise has been leadership development, and you have been dealing regularly with them. You have been conducting programs with them, and you have been talking to them. Now, so what would you tell leaders as far as networking is concerned? The importance of networking, what is it that they should do so that they can go ahead? And you also would have noticed in some of them maybe some discomfort to take that initiative. So why is it that, Shripa's first part of the question was, why is it that people have this uh, discomfort in taking that initiative? Yeah. So what is it that you recommend leaders within your leadership development program about networking?
So because when I was studying, I couldn't do much studies. So I didn't go for my post graduation or MBA or anything. So later I started studying things with a vengeance. And with my handicap of not knowing how to socialize, I spend more time studying and figuring out theories. So let me give you another one. So there is a social psychologist called Jacob Moreno. Jacob Moreno is also the father of something called psychodrama. Jacob Moreno was in a girls' hostel in one place, and he started mapping the relationships and network these girls have with each other. So he will simply ask a question to the students: if you want to go for a holiday, with whom would you like to go from this class? So Jane will say, I would like to go with Amy. So he will make an arrow. Jane goes to Amy. Amy would say that, no, I will love to go with Joseph. So he'll draw an arrow to Joseph. He called this sociometry at that time. While we have heard so much about psychometry, so introversion and extroversion comes under psychometry. So largely popularized by a Jungian concept. Whereas I started focusing more on sociometry and mathematically studying the network phenomena, which is what Jacob Moreno did. And Jacob Moreno could later predict, if one girl run away from the hostel, who will run away after that? Not because of the psychological makeup of that student, but the relationship she or he had with somebody else, which means I can actually now predict attrition in an organization by mapping the relationship strength. So the point one, I was more interested because of my nature. I can't go out and smile and connect with the people. I was looking at, is there a science that I could apply? And they found that the ability to build network is both systemic and personal. Systemic means when you think about a secretary of a CEO in an organization, the kind of relationships and part of multiple networks is a systemic phenomena. It might not be the personality type of that secretary. So many a time, I have a friend who was a McKinsey consultant. Before that, a rocket scientist from Philly. Then he became a dean of one of the biggest MBA institute and part of many of the venture capital firm. And in that process, he had this network with consulting, VCs, and academicians. Is it because of his personality type or because of the structural phenomena in which he is part of? There are both theories. And from a philosophy itself, there are only two broader philosophies. One is called individualism, and one is called structuralism, with the structure. So I was more trying, because as an individual, I didn't have much of the skills. So I started looking at this concept called sociometry. If you're interested, check Jacob Moreno and the concept of sociometry. The second thing that I studied, where when I work with organizations, mostly everybody talks about human capital. There's too much noise about human capital. Human capital is defined as the skills, expertise, and knowledge embedded in a human being, and everybody's trying to build that. And I was focusing on a new concept called the social capital. The concept of social capital is the trusted and reciprocal relationship through which resources could happen to somebody. So there is this interesting thing that you can Google called PayPal Mafia. PayPal Mafia. So if you think about any of the large organizations that came up in US in the last 20 years, all the founders once upon a time worked in PayPal, and they're not outside connected, but they have an inside deep trusted relationship. So I focused on like a Google algorithm, where if I could build trusted reciprocal relationship with the 10 people who could take me to 1,000 people, I avoided myself going to 1,000 people. That was my principle one. And there are more which will come. And the advice to the CEOs, again, I worked with a banking CEO whom I was his coach. And the first time when I shook hands with him, in body language, we say like a dead fish. He doesn't like people to touch him. He doesn't go out. Uh, and he never wore a formal clothes like many other banking CEOs. He never wore a formal suit. But that guy had brilliant, trusted relationships. So to me, everybody build powerful relationships. But when you have a purpose, we need to start mathematically map and see that do I have few relationships who could get me to anybody whom I want, which will help me to have impact for the purpose that I have. So that's been my advice to the CEOs whom I worked with.
Very nice to hear about that, Santosh. Trusted reciprocal relationships can actually help you build those relationships, which can definitely help an organization succeed overall. Because if everybody follows that pattern, then this is something which can be helpful to all. So, with this, then, after having spoken about networking, importance, impact, all of these things which are there, let's now come to uh, how is it, or what is it that now we can do, so that what is the advice which we can give to all our colleagues who are attending this particular session? What is it that we can do so that we can really go ahead and create a very high quality, sustainable, and effective network? Manish, over to you.
Sure, thank you. Very interesting. And the queue actually, if you see from Santosh also is almost similar as I use the word lifelong learners and friends for life. These are two fundamental thought processes or approach I typically use in individuals' life. So sharing or taking the cue from my previous response where I just talked about an example of say conference participation and speaking slots. Uh, so bringing in sustainable networking ecosystem, I would split again this response in two parts. One is finding a common platform or a common meeting ground where you have opportunity to meet these respective individuals whom you have already networked or you want to network. So you know keep up that momentum. There are opportunities where each of us would find uh, places where you can socialize. For example, I talked about golf or meeting in clubs where you consistently meet these individuals whom you have already got connected and build a stronger relationship. And I've seen this approach have a lasting and sustainable impact. Also, there are people as like-minded groups like social groups like Lions or Rotary, or even for that matter, art and culture groups, depending on the individual's choice, which is the person who wants to network and what is the objective or purpose for networking, and the other person who's also getting connected, his likes and dislikes. So all these options exist. So important question to this is like, why would one like to socialize or stay in touch with you? So if I want to network, I would ask this question first to my mind, that why would Santosh want to be in touch with me? And if I'm keen to build my relationship with Santosh, these are the answers I'll have to think about. So the process which I follow and I've also explained in my book. So define where do you see yourself in next 3 to 5 years. Basis who are the people you are inspired by and you want to be like them. Because the concept in my book also I've talked about is inspired to aspire. So with that as in philosophy, you create a benchmark of these individuals who are the ones you would want to be like. And to become like the one you are inspired by, you need to path or chalk out a journey or a path towards that process with the help of mentors, sponsors, and maybe your existing network who may guide and help you with their connects to connect with your individuals whom you are inspired by. Now, why would they do this? They, in the sense, I would say, why would somebody introduce you to the person you are inspired by? There again, my experience have been like, if you have a strong purpose, and this purpose should go beyond you, and if it is for greater good of the society, it is little easier to get mentors. Here I use or call the concept as prestige of prestige is in 3 P's, which is your performance. When I say your performance, the work you have done so far in the activities or the purpose what you are working towards has a significant implication in terms of influencing the other person whom you want to network to look at you in a different lens, that this guy is passionate and I can see his performance coming in. So that's performance is 1 P. The second is patience. We need to have patience and need not be very actively reaching out and show desperation. Then automatically the other individual may start feeling discomfort if you are too pushy. And hence, I always put it like be patient. And third P is perseverance. If you are really, really keen, it is very important for you to have this quality of perseverance. I have enough examples in my personal life where I started with name of the person in my diary, that one day I would want to connect with this gentleman. I'm really inspired by him, and I would want to be associated with him and want to be like him. In 3 to 5 years, it's not just that, and that gentleman becomes not only my mentor, but he's given a forward for my book also. And his wife and me, we were business partners. It took around 5 years, but a very honest and genuine relationship. And even today, we have very strong bonding. And he takes pride of being associated with me. So, fundamental background or backdrop is that if I'm reaching out to anyone, am I going to add value to that individual also? He may be anyone, but if that gap is still there, I would rather work on that to ensure that the connect, when it happens, is more valuable and it's mutual. He also sees benefit in connecting with me. So I use the phrase like खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि खुदा तुझसे पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. So with that as in philosophy, these 3 P's of performance, patience, and perseverance works fantastically well. And as I said, if you are diligent, committed, honest, and trustworthy to the purpose you have defined, people would see that you get connected to mentors. They will just open their phone diary, call them. Hey, I know Manish. And I've seen it happening, right? So it just happens. You get sponsors partnering with you. Finally, this set process also, once you have built a connect, I go back to my definition of networking. So you have to be in touch on and off with each of these individuals in very systemic and rhythmic fashion, where you keep them updated on your knowledge, meeting them in right meeting ground, as I shared earlier, and build that momentum to build this relationship stronger and stronger as you move up, and make that approach that everyone you connect, try to make as many friends for life as.
Okay, thank you, Manish, for that stepwise, systematic way by which a person can move ahead to create that sustainable network. Santosh, over to you. Some thoughts from your side as to how is it that we can create a high quality, sustainable, and effective network.
A couple of things again I can talk from my perspective that has helped me uh, easier. Again, based on my interest, I was trying to build unusual ways of building network. So one is called a concept called the power of the weak ties. It's a cult paper by a Stanford professor called Dr. Granovetter, which he simply says that you got your last job not because of your friends, but because of your friends' friends. And the paper is called The Power of Your Weak Ties. So there are strong ties, and then one of the way to understand weak ties is your friends' friends, or your friends who are in the college, like Manish said, in the school or something, which is not strong. But once upon a time they were strong. So one of the things I do is how do I connect with the weak ties, because strong ties will give me the same information, which was useful one by one. The second that has helped me is I'm a bit of a scatterbrain. I have multiple interests. One of the things I do is I hypnotize people. I write poetry. I used to write in a weekly column in Business Today called Buddha in the Boardroom. I have an interest in animals, particularly dogs, and I train dogs when I'm not training human beings. Uh, from these all smaller uh, interest groups that I'm involved with, I did an analysis with our technology tool of my Facebook friends, and they came into these clusters. One, a large number of friends were healers or yoga therapists or alternate healing. That comes from my earlier hypnosis background. A bunch of my other friends were either from an HR or a business background, or people who have gone through my training or coaching programs in the past. That's more like a bonding connection. The next cluster I had was visual artists largely, because I used to hang around with visual artists before. So when I map that, what I realized that in each community, I only need one person, one relationship. See, building a relationship is difficult, at least for me. So what I look at is few relationship which are stronger, and keep nurturing those relationship by giving something to the network back, uh, than trying to increase my network. So having hobbies. Two, looking at my weak ties. And the third concept which has helped me is by a professor at the University of Chicago called Professor Ron Burt, who has a cult paper on structural holes in organizations and people who bridge them. So I always went forward and connected. Structural holes means what we call like silos. There is a community here, and I always jumped in and tried to be the bridge. I would introduce freely, hey, oh, you're from this community, you are from this community, why don't I connect? Like if you're looking at earlier in the Mumbai politics, Sarath Pawar was a bridge, and you had two other parties. So Ron Butt's theory is people who are able to build structural holes get highly benefited from that. So I looked at increasing my weak ties. I looked at having specific interest groups because of my hobbies and interest. I looked at which communities I can bridge and which structural hole I can bridge, so that information from both communities pass through me. That has really helped, and maybe that's useful for you too.
Absolutely useful, no doubt about it, Santosh. I mean, all the things which you shared, this is something which can definitely be of help to many of us over here. So, with this, then, uh, I would now like to look at some questions, probably after both of you having given a stepwise process as to what is it that we can do. Let us look at some questions which may be there, which have not been answered till now. So, Anuradha has asked one question: how can you do networking with impact and still not be seen as a person who is self centered, you know, or salesy? Any one of you can answer that.
So I think I already explicitly mentioned in my inputs. Uh, First of all, there is no right or wrong. Is I think you all guys are coach. I don't need to coach you. Uh, but that philosophy has to be ingrained in your mind, because situation to situation, the requirement of every individual will change. I have seen CEOs who act differently on the dais there, who didn't exchange the card. When they come to know, okay, I'm the one who's going to give him growth fund, he'll come 10 times to my office. You get my point? And make multiple follow-ups. So I personally feel there's no right or wrong. It's not about sales pitch or all these things. It's all scrap. You define what you want to do and just do it. Be it sales, fine, no problem, because that was the requirement and you need something urgent to be done. It can be tactical for that particular aspect. Doesn't define you or paint you as a person who's a sales guy. And if it is something which you define that you want to build it, as I just explained, that want to be lifelong, friends for life, the approach will be different. Bottom line remains trustworthiness. Bottom line remains you are honest. Bottom line remains that you are adding value in that relationship. So if all these prospects or perspectives are unchanged, I don't see there is any problem in taking any approach depending on the need of the situation.
Okay, thank you for answering that, Manish. Both of you are authors. You have, Manish, written a book defining your orbit, and Santosh, you have written a book coaching for leaders. Yeah, so maybe a little bit about your book, Manish, and how it has helped you increase your own network.
Sure. So I'll put it the other way around. The book has not much helped me increase my network, but the book was written primarily to help people to build how to build network, not just about network. That, as the title goes, as you say, define your orbit. So it's fundamentally telling define your networking orbit. You can use that also as a tool, because it explains very beautifully a unique model which I have developed myself. Again, it's not researched. I want to do that further as I move forward in my life. If God gives me blessings and you guys give me good wish, probably I'll do my PhD with this as an one of my PhD program for research. But this is a very strong philosophy I have, and I've developed this model. It's already I've got my IP done and stuff like that around this and copyrights. So it's called hierarchy of aspirational orbits, which helps individual to map personal aspirations. It's simple but very structured method is explained in the book. So we have all of us like learned how Maslow talks about hierarchy of needs. No one is talking about or much about hierarchy of aspirations. So I've built my own hierarchy of aspirations, and the framework explains 5 orbital states for 7 dimensions of life, which captures all what we can think about. So these 5 orbital states are the stage one is basically self-aware stage, which in my concept I've talked about low achievement orbit, because being self-aware is a starting point. And believe me, 90% of the people in this world are not clear what they want to do and why they want to do. So I'm talking of being self-aware itself also is a very critical component of your own life journey. But still that falls as in starting point, as in low achievement journey. I call it lao, Lao. The second stage is self drive. So once you are aware what you want to achieve or what you want to do, it's important that you get into the second orbit, which is self driving orbit. And this I call this as medium achievement orbit. So when you are self driven individual, in my hierarchy of aspirations, you've reached at a stage called MAO, medium achievement orbit. The third stage is I call it as the stage where you are already self-aware, you are driving yourself, but then often you find there is an element of discipline missing. So it is important that you bring in this element of self-discipline. And I've observed and I've given enough examples also in our book where it talks about how a self-disciplined person automatically starts differentiating him from others, and he gets categorized as in my book an above average achievement orbit called AAO. The fourth stage I'm talking about is moving to the next orbit of aspiration is self-confidence. And this is where when the individual he is reasonably self-confident, his purpose is clear, self-driving himself, has tremendous amount of discipline, he automatically moves into next orbit, which is self-confidence, where he's achieved something. And you would find him in a zone, I call it as high achievement orbit. How? HAO. And ultimately, the last orbit, which is self-joy or wisdom achievement orbit, I call. And that is something very few would really be able to achieve. But as I said, there are 7 dimensions. I won't give much on that. You can read the book. But any of these dimensions, you can map any as your aspiration, and you can move your life journey from ignorance to enlightenment using this framework. And there are several interesting concepts which will help individuals to become lifelong learner. And rest I would leave to audience to read more about it. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Manish, for talking a little bit about your book. Santhosh, your book also is there, coaching. That is, you have written the book, which is coaching, the art of developing leaders. So maybe a few lines on that because we are coming towards a closure now, and
Yeah.
some lines before that from you.
I'm not going to talk about my book because I've never done that. I haven't done a book speaking or a book release. I just wrote the book. But what is important for this group is to know how that happens, which is to the subject. I wrote this book and I was talking to an international publisher. They gave me a 25-page document where I have to prove why this book and what are the books available in the market, what could be the potential. And I got really pissed off and I said, I thought it's your job. My job is to write and your job is to study and marketing and all those things, which I'm not going to do. So I didn't do anything. And I teach a course those days called PGP Max at ISB. This is with the people with 15 years of experience when they go for a 1-year MBA. And I went to do that 2 days of training there. And ISB is possibly the only campus that I've found which has a bar inside. So my students, who are of course elders, invited me for a drink in the evening. And when I'm sitting and drinking, this guy asked me, why haven't you written a book? I said, no, man, I have written a book, but this book publisher ask you too many questions that I need to do study on their behalf, which I'm pissed off. I don't want. So he said, do you have the manuscript with you? I said, yes. Would you send it to me? I said, who are you? He said, I'm the managing director of Wiley. I said, okay, here is a book. Don't ask me anything. And he published it, and I haven't done anything about it. I was keen to write the first book because that time in India, we didn't know much about what's really coaching. And it's kind of a kitschy. I don't think I won't say it's a great book because I try to address the coaches. I try to address HR folks. How do they choose a coach? I try to address the clients, but it just gives you an overview. That's it.
Sure. Thank you, Santhosh, for sharing a little bit about how that book actually came into
Network.
existence. Okay, so with this, then we are coming towards the closure of the session, and I would just like to very quickly maybe summarize a little bit about what both of you mentioned. Yes, I think a very important takeaway was that when we talk about network and networking, it is about building connects and maintaining it off and on based on the objectives which we define for ourselves. I think that is something which needs to be understood by all of us. And if that is clear, then we are able to ensure that our networks are sustainable, effective, and we are really able to get the best out of it. And uh, Santosh, you mentioned about the trusted reciprocal relationships, which can really help us, build, like having that network with those 100 people, multiplying it to 10,000 people, through trusted reciprocal relationships is something I'm sure which can be of great help to everybody over here. So with this, thank you very much, both of you, Santosh as well as Manish, for taking the time and for talking about how networking can really create an impact for us. It was really a very insightful session for me, and I'm sure the same for everyone also. So with this, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And everybody, please do come to Coorg and have vacation couple of days in my place. Thank
You
you.
count me in.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank
To
you
come.
because everyone knows Kurg is a wonderful place. So I'm
Yes.
sure you will have lots of takers who are there.
Yeah. Please
Thank
do
you.
come.
Thank
I
you
have
very
been.
much.
Bye bye. Bye.
Super.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, Santosh. Wonderful listening to you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rajesh.
Thank you.